previous meetings. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are gathered today here in Unama'ki, the land of the fog, a part of Mi'kma'ki, this unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people since time immemorial. We honor and thank the Mi'kmaq for sharing their land and home with us. So we have, okay. So you have in front of you an agenda that was circulated last week. I will ask for any errors, if there are any, but more importantly, any additions to the agenda as circulated. Councillor Marchand.
Yeah, I'd like to add DCB financials. I'd just like to get a motion so our CEO could ask to get the financials for the last number of years from DCB.
So there's been a request to add a question about financials for Destination Cape Breton. I see that Destination Cape Breton in some incarnation is on our agenda already under CAO 10B, which is designation of Destination Cape Breton. But if we want to add it as a separate item, we need unanimous consent from Council. So on the day of meetings, we expect that we would only add items if we have unanimous consent. Do we have unanimous consent? Go ahead.
Warden, I believe also that those are supposed to be submitted using an item added form, according to our council procedural policy. Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah. So we don't. So it's supposed to come in a written format, and that written format includes what the. Oh, sorry. What includes what the desired outcome is. Sorry. Sometimes that seems like it's lit, and it's others it's not. Yeah, and so it's like it's a form that requires you to kind of state what your intended outcome is that you're requesting. So, but there's procedurally, it's council's prerogative to choose to follow that route or not. But I did want to just flag it as kind of our process has been formalized in this procedural policy.
And I do want to take a minute to maybe review that because I think we did have an item last week that last month that we added with unanimous consent. And so maybe I'll just go to that section and we can take a look at it. And I do think that the point of making sure that we have items on the agenda beforehand is so staff can provide meaningful information to us about the topic at hand. So let me just read from page 12 of 20, which is actually item number 14, additions to agenda. So additions to the regular special council or committee of the whole meeting must be submitted to the office of the CAO by noon on Thursday before the meeting. For all meetings, submissions are due by noon 2 days prior. And so 4.2 says that agenda items that require backup information can be in the form of staff briefing. Requests for additional items to the agenda following its publications shall not be considered except under the circumstances outlined below. So it does say that you can have A, submissions as a late item using an items added form. It can also be B, once regular special council or committee of the whole meeting agenda is published, an item of business not listed may not be introduced at a meeting unless an item added form is completed and approved in advance. So I have highlighted here in pink, additions to regular council or committee of the whole meeting agendas from the floor during the meeting require an added item form to be submitted prior to the meeting and a unanimous motion from council. However, councillors may add a notice of motion from the floor to a special meeting with an agenda, with a majority vote. So I'll begin by apologizing because I believe at the last meeting I did sort of say, do we have unanimous consent? And there was not a form circulated. And just to kind of review this, I think one thing we should be really proud of at this municipality is that you can be sitting at home and have every piece of paper in front of you that the councillors at this meeting have. And so the only way that happens is if there's a time frame that backs it up so that people at home know know when they can look at that and that they're ready to go. And also, you know, we want staff to be able to come prepared. So I'm going to take the blame on this because I probably set a precedent last month by allowing an item to be added after the fact. So I'm going to say that we have not met the requirements for an item to be added. We do have an item on the agenda if it comes up in conversation then, but I think it'll have to wait until our next committee of the whole meeting. So,
Madam Chair.
yes, please.
Deputy.
No, I was going to say, I guess, yeah, you could give them notice of motion, though, to bring it up at regular council in December if you wanted.
Well, when we're discussing it on item 10, I'll make a motion then.
Okay.
So, that matter's been resolved, so I'm wondering if I can have a motion.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You do have the terms of reference to add as well.
Oh, yes. So we will add the terms of reference to the,
Municipal emergency planning.
yes, so the municipal emergency planning terms of reference or committee terms of reference that we made recommendation about in our policy and committee meeting. And would we also, the in-camera? Yeah. So we made a decision in camera, or we have information to share, a motion from our in-camera discussion. So item, what number is it? New business? 15? No. Yeah, 15A will be in camera regarding ABCC appointments. And B will be the terms of reference policy recommendation. Okay. So those two additions, are there any other additions, issues around the agenda? Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the agenda as circulated with those two additions. Moved by Councillor Mumberket and seconded by Councillor Marchand. No, sorry. Go ahead.
So we're adding the terms of reference, and what supporting information is allowing us to add that right now? Is there something sent? Okay, you're adding the terms of reference.
So we voted at our policy committee meeting that we were going to send that to council for to recommend.
But since it's not here, does anyone have it? Like if you refuse one, the information is not there for everyone.
Right, and that, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, if you're refusing one because the items added was not sent, I think you need to do it for this one as well.
And I agree, because the discussion spoke about some edits that, albeit minor, are actually not included, the edits are not included in anything we pushed out on social media or put on the website, so.
They will be in the package for the council meeting where it finally gets approved, but they are not public at this time.
Right, so we would then not,
I guess we're not adding anything, so the
we
motion is to approve the agenda.
but in-camera items, go ahead.
Sorry, I just, to your point, Councillor, I would agree about the MEMPC terms of reference. I think they should be publicized in our next regular council, where we'll make a decision then. For the in-camera, I believe we should address any motions from in-camera right now, because that was on the agenda. We had in-camera on the agenda, and there's motions as a result, so we should probably do that before proceeding into.
Yeah, we were required to do so. Right, in addition to.
So, yeah, would that make, more sense from the layout to do the in-camera stuff right at the beginning, because they're not really an item added.
Exactly.
It's a motion coming out of in-camera, yeah.
So given that we are, so what you're saying is that we wouldn't do this as a new item. It's actually a motion as we begin this meeting because it is coming out of in camera. Do we, in terms of order, because we have a motion on the floor to accept the agenda.
And it was already on your agenda that was publicized. This is not a new item. It was already, so there's no changes to the agenda.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
I'll second the approval of the agenda.
So we have a motion to accept the agenda as circulated from Councillor Mumbercat, seconded by Deputy Warden Sampson. Okay. No more questions on that? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the agenda as circulated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion is carried. And so what I will say is that there was a recommendation from in camera regarding ABCC citizen appointments. So moved by Councillor Mumbercat that we are going to adopt appoint the following residents to the following committees. So we have Dorothy Boer for the IDEA Committee for a 5-year term, Robin Cotton and Robert Wombolt to the Planning Advisory Commission for a 5-year term, Stacey Morrison to the RCMP Advisory Board for a 5-year term, and Cindy Walker to the the Destination Cape Breton Committee for a 3-year term. That is their, with respect to their terms of reference. Further, that the staff be authorized to advertise remaining vacancies. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of accepting the appointments and permission to advertise signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay. So item 6 is review of the minutes. That's on page 6 of your package. So I'll ask staff to, sorry, page 5. No. Page 3. So I'll ask, page 3. Folks have had an opportunity to take a look. They've circulated last week. Are there any errors or omissions to the minutes as circulated? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on November 12th as circulated. Moved by Councillor Mumbercat. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. Any question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. So we have one presentation this evening. We're all ready for you. Welcome Rochelle Sampson, who will speak to us about the CBREN, so the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network Information and Activity Report for the second quarter from July to September of 2024.
Perfect. Do I control this, Shelley, or do you? I do. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rochelle Sampson, for those of you who don't know me. I am the Economic Development Officer for Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County. I've been in the position since June, so I am still a little bit fresh. So my Q1 report was brief, but I've been here for quite a few months now, so I've got a little bit more under my belt and a little more exciting things to tell you. I will start off, I know that you guys received this report in your package. Is there any questions before I jump into the presentation? No? Okay. So I won't, read it word by word. I know you guys did get to review it, so I will touch on some highlights, and then if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So all of our reports start off by giving a background on the Cape Breton Partnership, as well as listing the REN Board and the CB-REN Liaison Oversight Committee. If those ever change, you will see that update in the report. The reporting period for this period was July 1st to September 30th. So most of the summer and a little bit of fall coming back into regular scheduled events. So over the summer, there were quite a few events that we did attend. You will see us out and about at almost, anything we can get our hands on. From every county, there is one of me, an EDO in each county. So we promote and we participate in a lot of events held by participants and community members to show our support in any function or capacity that we can. And we attended a lot of federal announcements in the area to support them as well. We'd like to highlight that there is an Invest in Cape Breton podcast, and the 5th episode was released in August, which was how to access the island's hidden workforce. It's an excellent podcast, and if you do get a chance to listen to it, I really do encourage it. There was quite a few summer events that were held, and we were able to volunteer or participate or host in some of them, such as the Strait Area Chamber of Commerce Fall Golf Classic, and no one won the car that day, so, nobody left, too excited, but everyone seemed to have a good time. And so listed there, were some of the events that we hosted. So some of the major project updates that I'm working on, one of them would be the Strait of Canso website. And so this is a website that was developed a couple of years ago, and it's at its end stages of phase 1 to help attract foreign direct investment to the area. It's a really well-done website. We worked with a few different partners on it, and the working group consists of a few individuals such as myself, Strait Area Chamber of Commerce, Karen Malcolm from ACOA, Wanda McLean from Invest Nova Scotia, and Martin as well, that you guys know. And so that website's coming along really well. I do encourage you to take a look at it. We have a marketing campaign coming out in early January that's going to help promote it, and we're really proud of the work that we were able to do on it. So if you do have any feedback on it, we're very open and would love to hear it, but I do encourage you to take a look at it. I was able to work with Dan on the green cement conceptual study that is now published on the Cape Breton Partnership website. Another excellent report that dives into the use of a byproduct to generate green cement, fly ash, that Nova Scotia Power like a byproduct of Nova Scotia Power. And it's a great report that dives into a potential opportunity in the Strait to produce green cement. And so we're really proud of that report, and we're really happy with the work that Dan did on that. And again, if you get a chance, do read it. It was very well done. I also am participating in a program called GMIST Activate. So myself and 4 others in the community produced a cohort, and we are participating in a program that's put on by the Cody Institute of St. FX and GMIST, which is Gross Mourne Institute of Sustainable Tourism. And so there's a few different parts of that. There's a course component, and then there was an in-person project in Gross Mourne that we recently completed in November. And we'll have more about that in our Q3 report. Another big project that I'm working on is the Ocean Innovation Center in Port Hawkesbury. We're looking at its use for that in the marine industry, which has focused us into looking at potential aquaculture development projects in our area and how we could potentially encourage or help those individuals streamline that process in here in Nova Scotia and especially in Richmond County. Alongside that, we offer quite a bit of business support to local community members and business owners on whether they're looking for land or they're having trouble navigating the grant system or any questions related to government supports. So we're always open to answer those questions. I'm here at the office at Richmond County as well as in Port Hawkesbury, and we run into quite a few folks who just have, general questions or need help guiding and navigating through those issues throughout the day-to-day. Throughout the rest of the report, you'll see updates from the rest of my team, which is the Green Energy Engagement Program. So we are completing some of our offshore wind sessions recently. I had the pleasure of attending quite a few sessions and got to see Jen in action and everything she kind of builds up for. And it was it's pretty incredible what kind of information that they have and how they can explain it so that you can understand it. And so these sessions are quite important in our community, and they're doing them. They're just wrapping up, which is lovely. They just have, I think, 2 more left on Wednesday. We also have a creative economy Development Officer, who is Bill Culp. He is always out, working on growing the film industry here in Richmond County and all over the island. He is working with Tellil on a Cape Breton Reads, and which they've secured some funding from Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage. And he has quite a few projects on the go at all times. And then we have our People and Labor Force Attraction team within our group, and so they're working with local entrepreneurs and local businesses and just community members on their immigration, whether that's bringing in workers to fill labor gaps or helping individuals secure their immigration here in Nova Scotia and in Cape Breton. Since this report is just a few months old now, our upcoming events were the offshore wind session. So we did have one in Ayrshire last Wednesday, and it went very well. It was well attended, and there was some good conversations and good insight. So that was wonderful to see. And we had our Cape Breton Partnership Investor Summit back in October, which was a great success. At the bottom of this report, there are some metrics that you can see on kind of where our concentrations are and what projects we're working on and what kind of categories, as well as our communications report regarding the social media updates and socials and, what our communications team is working on at all times, and then kind of some metrics to go along with that. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Does anybody have any questions for Rochelle? Councillor Marchand?
Okay. Need the light in the front. Rochelle, when you speak of helping business with the grant system, which grant systems, like provincial, federal, or do you help them with like volunteer groups with grants here at the county?
So far, my main focus has been entrepreneurs, individuals in business who are looking to, let's say, with Efficiency Nova Scotia, working through those grants, and just better understanding them and trying to connect them with someone who can either help them myself if I have the knowledge, or just connecting them with someone who has a better answer if they can't get a hold of somebody, because somebody tried to call and couldn't get through to anybody, and we just happened to have a contact there.
Question. And the green cement, you say you're working with Dan on that? Now, that's not a cement that's colored green. No, that's just reusing a byproduct of something else.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Replacing a portion of the, exactly.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How long has that been going on?
The report was just completed within the last couple of months. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Mumbercat?
Thank you, Warden. Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Rochelle. Really excited about the green cement study. That's a great flag, Councillor Marchand. I think it presents an excellent business case for potential investors, and I know that Dan McDonald is really familiar with this region, so that's great. The straightofcanso.com website, also super excited to see that. I'm wondering if the two could be linked, or if they already are. The .com link I don't think is actually working. It's a .ca. So you guys, or maybe it wasn't resolving well on my computer. It could be a me issue. There's, but just maybe want to double check that. But also wondering, because I think the green cement studies on the partnership website. I'm wondering if it is also linked there.
So on the, I believe it's the straightofcanso.ca, and it needs to make sure that there's the Strait of Canso. Yeah. We're rejigging it actually right now to have two separate pages. Right now it has just the announcements, and what it's going to have is, we're trying to determine the perfect wording, but announcements and opportunities. And so the opportunities would hold items like the green cement report. I know Proxbury Paper is looking to increase their transload service. And so any type of business opportunity or an RFP would go in that section so that individuals have a quick access to what's available to kind of grow their business within the area. Yeah. So if ever there is a opportunity that you guys see, you feel free to send it my way. I can add it to the website. But
Yeah, fantastic bit of information and lots happening in the Strait region for sure. So thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else who has any questions? Thank you very much, Rochelle. We appreciate it. No. You're done.
Clayton gave you the hook.
my hope in the future is to have these a little more prompt to like the end of that quarter. So get in shortly after the quarter is up so that the information is a little bit more relevant. That's all. But thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 8 is Warden's items. So there are 2 reports. To do them chronologically, I think I'll direct folks to page 24, which is Councillor Mumberket's report from early September, if not the 1st of September, through to the date of our swearing in. So that's on page 24. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Mumberket on that item? That's it. Yeah. Then I'll direct you to the page before that, which is the warden's report. So I'll be doing reports monthly. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, October's month consisted of a day because the swearing in was on the 30th. But November's report, I do want to just flag a couple things. One of the items that's listed there, the second from the bottom, is the homelessness and service-based count presentation. Councillor Mumberket has a bit of there's an agenda item on that matter, just for your information. I attended this session virtually. And I also want to draw people's attention to the fall convention for the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. So 3 of us were able to attend that, myself, Deputy Warden Sampson, and Councillor Mumberket. Certainly loads of information in loads of opportunity to network with other people in other municipalities doing important work. Lots of information about things that everyone would find something particularly interesting. I personally found the information about municipalities' responsibility around disasters and what the municipality's role is, how that links to insurance companies. So lots coming out about that. And that tied in quite nicely to the following day's presentation, which was the very last one, which was highly publicized on the Coastal Action Plan and the municipality's role in light of the Coastal Protection Act not being proclaimed. I don't know if the other 2 attendees have anything they want to add.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Enjoyed even, I think it was Friday morning, the governance session was kind of interesting. Some of these things, it's funny because it would be almost interesting, and maybe that's a suggestion, but I'm scared to get put on the organizing committee. Yeah. You know, if once in a while they have some concurrent sessions, but some of these things could be a few hours, could be a little bit long, like, you know, to really get into the meat and potatoes of them, because a lot of them, they're great, but they feel like a brief introduction and then you're moved on to something else. But that might be something I'd be nervous to suggest in the future in case I'd get involved in organizing it.
It's true, certainly a lot of the sessions were very short, from 30 minutes to 60, I think was the longest, right? And there was actually some overlap. I didn't attend the governance section because I had attended the governance discussion on November 4th or 5th, but kind of a shame because what he said at that session was that it actually was not the same presentation because they anticipated that. So I went to something else, and not that it wasn't good, but yeah, it's difficult when you have concurrent sessions. So, Councillor Mumberket?
Thank you. So I did want to mention about the concurrent sessions as well. There was one at the same time done by CN, as they had a welcoming, inclusive, diversity kind of approach to change. So I attended the CN session because I was particularly interested in their plans around the short line here in the heavy industrial park in particular, and again heard some really interesting information from them about how they respond to security and safety around their rail lines. And as we kind of look at presentations like Rochelle just gave around, related to the green cement study and the potential of having to connect to, River Denny's to access that limestone deposit as well as the fly ash. Just really, I think for Richmond County, a lot of relevant kind of information there, and I think an opportunity to strengthen our relationship with that company, which they seem very open to. And I did want to also mention that this was, I think, the first time in NSFM's history where they had sort of a networking session. Remember the tables? You could go to the different tables, and the tables included the various committees, subcommittees of NSFM that are working on specific things like policing or whatever the case may be. And I think that provided for some really impactful discussion and sharing of ideas between municipal units, because I think we all could kind of start to really see how we can influence the NSFM agenda and the advocacy piece for municipalities, not just for us, but for all municipalities. So that's the only two things I wanted to mention on that, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marbucket. Are there any other questions? Councillor?
I just had a question around the disaster and insurance companies. What do you have any information on that, or was that just kind of a verbal thing?
It was just a verbal thing, but it was, I'll give you a brief synopsis. There was presentation from Intact, which is typically the insurer of most municipalities. They spoke at length about how, so part of it was the connection between disasters. So what fire does and how it impacts your risk during flooding, and vice versa. So land that has been where their forest fires have gone, flooding is impacted differently. So one of the elements was, that municipalities need to be really mindful of each disaster because it can then impact others. So an example for us would have been when Fiona came through, or even Dorian, knocked down the trees, and they do believe that there is, that may have contributed to the fires last summer, really kind of sweeping through because there had been so many trees knocked down that were sort of dead wood and dried up. And so those kinds of things. There was also kind of discussion about the role of insurance. And so if you look at what's happening in Florida, so there have been so many hurricanes and so much flooding that there are a lot of insurance companies pulling out of that state. And so that it is very likely the case that you can't get insurance. And also that sometimes people are a little bit naive about what their insurance actually covers. And that following disaster, some things are actually not covered. They saw that in Port Basque as houses, were lost. People said, gosh, I'm going to have to go to my insurance, only to find out that that was not covered by insurance. So then what do desperate people do? They go to the municipality and say, you shouldn't have let me build here. And so what does that mean? What is the implication for municipalities around our planning and our use of bylaws? And so on that point, that they did say that there are no resolved cases at this point, but there are several before the courts. Now, who knows how those will play out? But it did sort of speak to how one issue deals with another in terms of disaster planning, but also sort of the role of municipalities and what happens when insurance companies don't pony up.
I guess that's interesting, though, but even for fires, I mean, if people can go because your house is washed out into the water, what about for fires? Could we get blamed? Could people come after us if insurance companies don't pay for that? Are there cases in courts to that as well?
I can't recall if she spoke about specific cases, but there were that were currently before the court. So I can't speak to that, but she did speak about how, and I was very surprised to hear this, that in Fort Mac during the fires there were houses that it made it sound like they actually had mortgages, but their insurance didn't have enough insurance, which I remember listening thinking, that is the strangest thing, because my mortgage company requires that I submit enough insurance, right? But it sounded like Alberta, in Fort Mac, that wasn't the case in some instances. But there was a sense of desperate people who have lost what is essentially everything, which is their home, but also the asset of their home. Will look to the first person they can, and who calls you when your driveway's not plowed. For every other matter, it is your municipal, counselor. So nothing has been resolved, but she did sort of flag that as an interesting issue. Any other issues? No?
Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to add to that, what you were saying too about sometimes some things being a factor after the fact or so on. I remember she talked a bit about, as well as, during that time, and trying to, this kind of leads back to our municipal emergency management planning group, coming up with all the ways or all the other things that can go wrong in that moment, and how many other things are affected at that time, that the more planning ahead of time, the better set up you are, because there's so many things that become secondary that you wouldn't think of immediately, but can become a big risk as soon as one domino falls. As well as mitigating.
Sorry.
Yeah, as well as trying to mitigate risk for, with planning strategies around land use and so on and that.
It was a big, long conversation about wetlands and the importance of wetlands and preserving wetlands and maintaining wetlands and things municipalities can do, planting along banks to prevent erosion. Very, very, it was an hour of, oh my God, things you just really hadn't considered. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, we're good there? Okay, so item 9 is Councillor Mumberket's agenda item. She has provided those of us here with information from the Nova Scotia Housing Matters Coalition. And am I right, Councillor Mumberket, this is from the presentation that occurred, I forget the day now, but.
So it's basically a report from the Housing Matters, the Straight Richmond Housing Matters Coalition. And it does cover both the housing symposium and the surface-based count. The surface-based count was recently made public, but I just thought just to make it helpful for councillors, I'd put a little bit of information in here. But I did want to mention that our coalition, just for those who may not be as familiar with it, we meet quarterly. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 11th. It consists of individuals and members of organizations that kind of represent a wide spectrum of housing-related issues, so health and social services organizations, municipal representatives, and our membership now, I'm really pleased to say, also includes our regional representative on the Nova Scotia Nonprofit Housing Association, who is my co-chair, Cheryl McDaniel, along with our two YMCA housing support workers in the region. That is, those housing support workers have only been at their efforts for the last couple of years. So I thought maybe the presence of those folks in the region might be new information to some folks. So my report kind of outlines and includes a link, and I'll publish that online as well on I think actually I might have already done that on my Facebook page, and perhaps, or through you to the clerk and the CAO, if we could kind of include that on our as part of our package too of information available to the public. It includes information on the housing symposium, which is always a very urban-focused discussion around homelessness in Nova Scotia. But this time, the United Way in Halifax specifically wanted to have a conversation about rural challenges and rural solutions. So the coalition had, I think, some really relevant information to share there, and you'll see marked in the slides, we spoke about kind of what our role is around networking and partnerships and education and knowledge exchange, but also how that coalition has led to tangibles like the a new regional nonprofit housing association that is just in the process of being formed through the chamber. You know, the new Renest Furniture Society, which provides, you know, secondhand furniture to folks who find themselves in need of such when they are placed in housing. The work of the coalition also led directly to the service-based count that we're going to talk about in 2021, and also this one here in 2024. And it also has led, I think, it has helped to inform, anyway, municipal policy to incent private divestment. You see housing very prominently in our strategic plan, 2 of our 4 pillars. It's embedded in our land use planning, and it's embedded, of course, in our new capital improvement policy as well. So, so that's what we kind of covered as terms of policy solutions for the Housing Symposium. And understanding the nature of the issue in our area has also been a big area of focus for the coalition, and so that is why we've supported the service-based count for homelessness in our region. It's the region that is covered by the count is the eastern region of Nova Scotia, as defined by Nova Scotia Health. So it would be Antigonish, Guysborough, and then all of the counties on Cape Breton Island. And what we asked the research team to do, the research team was led by Dr. Catherine Leviton-Reed from Cape Breton University, as well as members of the health promotions team here in the region. We asked them to kind of separate out, whenever possible, the rural information from the more urban Sydney core area, because, again, very different issues and opportunities there. So they've done that in so much as they can, and you'll see in the slides that they've often separated out Antigonish and Guysborough, and then Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. They cannot break it down to a county level. I figured that would be a question that would come up from council. So I asked the question. They cannot break it down to a county level because our numbers because we're rural, are much smaller, and it becomes an issue of privacy. And so their research ethics board would not enable them to publish anything kind of lower than those groupings that I mentioned. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of details in here. There's an infographic that they've produced to go with the report, as well as the slides. And at the end of the day, we've got, you know, this year, based on the count, 719 people in the eastern region who are experiencing some form of homelessness. And that it does not include 174 children who are also reported to be either under either the full-time or part-time care of those experiencing homelessness. So it's an impact of 893 people in a region of Nova Scotia that doesn't have all that many people in it. So it's a startling figure. You know, their definition of homelessness in the case of the study was really based on those who are unsheltered, living rough, those who are emergency sheltered, those who are provisionally accommodated, folks in institutional care, or those at risk of homelessness because they're either facing eviction or in some kind of other precarious type of housing situation. And of course, as you can imagine, in rural areas, our institutional care numbers are very low. It doesn't necessarily mean that our residents are not being impacted and are in institutional care. What that means is we don't have institutional care facilities in our region, and so those numbers don't get reflected. They get reflected in the larger area. The other thing I wanted to flag in this is that the way that the data is collected, it's through service providers, and it's a specific type of count that has been conducted the last number of years. This would not be possible without the support and cooperation of our service providers. So for those who participated in the count, I really want to say thank you. This information helps us understand, I think, the scope and the nature of the problem that people are facing in our communities, and I think will help us continue to develop better policy and solutions and work with other levels of government because we have data to back up what we know anecdotally to be true because we live in our communities and we talk to people and we see the challenges they're facing. So I do want to mention specifically for Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria as well that there were a number of 87 individuals in the service-based count, just in our 3 counties, who were experiencing homelessness. So it makes up about 12% of the total number of people who are facing this. And when we hear about, you know, what what experiences people are facing. We're hearing a lot about, people who are staying with friends, they're couch surfing, they're staying with family members, they're in transitional housing, or even, in a temporary kind of hotel, motel situation. Homelessness looks different in rural regions than it does in urban centers, and a lot of that is because it becomes very invisible here, because people will be provisionally accommodated, or they, they're flying under the radar. The other flag is that in terms of who is experiencing homelessness, most individuals are in their 30s who are facing this issue in our communities. About a third of the people identified are in their 30s, between the ages of 30 and 39. Second to that was the folks in the age range of 40 to 49, 21%. And people between age 16 and 29 collectively were almost a quarter of the people who are facing homelessness in our region. And it's about an even split between male and female. Marital status tends to be more folks who are single, separated, or divorced experiencing homelessness, and by a vast majority, about 83%. In terms of folks who are, having this impact them, the majority, or many, 35% were living with mental illness, and another 36% were living with addiction. So the numbers are, they are staggering. One of the things that Dr. Leviton-Reed pointed out in her presentation, you'll recall, Warden, I'm sure, is that 59% of the people experiencing homelessness were in receipt of income assistance. So I think that really demonstrates a huge gap between the resources that are available to support, constituents in these situations and the amount of funds that they are receiving just to stay afloat and just to keep a roof over their head. That's a huge chunk of the people who are being impacted. So again, I will leave it there. I think for many of us on the call, and I was really. Thrown into the kind of hosting role for this event, the knowledge sharing event that they had on the 29th. But was really glad to be able to get that firsthand account. And I, although it wasn't recorded, I'm sure that the research team would be more than happy to come and, do additional updates. So if council had an interest in that or wanted to kind of have a more fulsome conversation with the research team, I'd be happy to kind of facilitate that. It's startling numbers, and I think it demonstrates that even though municipalities are not primarily responsible for housing, it tends to be a provincial responsibility. It's going to take all of our effort to help resolve the issues, even in rural Nova Scotia. And I guess as one last point of context, the jump in the number from 2021 is really what concerned me as well. For folks who were here at this table and listening online, in 2021 we talked about the number was 419 people who were facing homelessness in that year. We've jumped by 300 people. Up to 719. So it's quite a marked difference. A 72% increase in just a 3-year span, which I think also demonstrates the urgency of the situation. So, Warden, I'll leave it there and invite any questions, or if anybody has any follow-up, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, a couple of things jumped out to me. First is, I think we can say that these are people who have been counted by service providers, which does not include people who have not been counted because they have not been able to access services. And in rural communities without transit that allows you to get from West Arishat to Port Hawkesbury, where, and in some cases these services are new, and so people aren't aware that they exist. So it is absolutely underreporting. So this is at least, I also thought that the point they mentioned about 60% of folks who are experiencing, those 719 people who are experiencing homelessness, say that it is because rents are too high. So there has never been a strategic plan, I think, in Richmond County that didn't make reference to affordable housing, but certainly certainly if the time is not now for affordable housing, it has never existed before the way it looks now. And I think if you look at some of the data they're talking about, there is, 72% increase in homelessness, but the risk of homelessness is astronomical. Like, that is up in the last 3 years by 157% in Antigonish, Guysborough, Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. So, you're talking about the risk of homelessness increasing by 157%, which means that the numbers that we should anticipate moving forward without considerable intervention, that there's nowhere to go but up in these numbers. So does anybody else have any comments, thoughts, concerns? Councillor Mershon?
Yeah, but was there a percentage for how many people are actually being home or housed? Like, I think what's interesting, you made the comment of people that are kind of house surfing. I would never think of them as homeless. Like, if a friend's kid was staying with us, I wouldn't think of them as homeless. If the situation at home, if they were having struggles at home, we've done that. You take friends of your kids in, and I never looked at them as homeless. But you made that comment that that's couch surfing or house surfing, or so. What percentage in the number of 719 do you think is that? Yeah, because I wouldn't look at that as homeless, but I guess for this study they did.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, so when they categorize as provisionally housed, that is where folks who are, having that experience, that is kind of how they would fall in. But it does also include, probably a few other types of situations. So they did not break out numbers on every type of homelessness because, and I mean, we could probably, access more detailed data, but again, rural nature of our community, they're going to probably have to continue to aggregate that information to protect privacy interests, right? But no, they definitely would consider folks who have been displaced from their normal family living arrangement into a situation like that as someone who is facing homelessness. Because the bottom line is if your kindness wasn't in place for them, right, they would be facing homelessness. So.
And just to your point about youth, friends of, when I was early days in my early time as principal, if I had a person like that, we could connect them to the Department of Community Services, and we could find that 16, 17, 18-year-old, we could find them support, we could find them an apartment, we could find, there were things we could do. And so there were several times that we would, through DCS involvement and through Children's Aid is technically responsible till they're 18, but that 16 to 18 is a little bit different. I can tell you there is absolutely no chance, given the vacancy rates, that Schools Plus, that those people work in schools could ever work with the vacancy rate that we have now. And one of my first duties as principal was to hire a Schools Plus facilitator for the Port Hawkesbury Richmond County Schools. It was a pilot program at the time. I spoke to her this week about the difference in things that are impacting people. And so some of the people that aren't getting included in this count, another example of that would be, a family that has lost their housing here that has to move to Amherst because that's the only place. So you're talking about pulling multiple children out of school. We never had to do that 15, 20 years ago. So the people that aren't on this list, it's not like things are a bowl of cherries for them either.
Oh, that's right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, and just to give you some specific numbers, which again, to your point, Warden, definitely undercounting or underrepresented, there were 33 children experiencing homelessness in Antigonish, Guysborough, and 59 children experiencing homelessness in Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria counties. So these are, many of whom would be provisionally accommodated in the way that you're describing. And 20% of the folks, of the 719 individuals, indicated that conflict with family or being kicked out related to separation, divorce, or other types of family conflict this is why they were experiencing that homelessness right now. So complex problem, And, family violence specifically was reported as, a barrier for 30% of the clients who are experiencing homelessness. So there are some complex family situations that are contributing to this overall problem as well.
And the most challenging situations, there was always a bed in Sydney or Halifax. And there is no way, Jose, a bed in Sydney or Halifax. It really is startling to see the stats for Phoenix House and how things are headed in that direction. It's completely different than it was just a few years back. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Councilor Kit, thanks for all that information. That's great stuff. Looking at one of the pages in the document, it says getting to the tangibles, and it talks of lack of regional nonprofit. And of course, you guys have always heard me talk about the Antigonish Affordable Housing Society and all the work that's been done over there and all the apartment buildings and the housing that's built from that society. So is there any update? I know the Strait Area Chamber of Commerce is looking to do a nonprofit housing society. Is there any update on that? Or?
So great question, Councillor. The update is that my last conversation with Tanya at the Chamber was that they ended up having to resubmit their grant application to the Transformation Fund, Community Housing Transformation Fund, I think it is. And pardon me if I'm not getting that nomenclature quite right. But anyway, so they've resubmitted under a new category, and I think they're just waiting to hear back on the funding. Once that's done, they're prepared to put out an RFP for a consultant to put the organization together. So I expect it imminently. That being said, and although her conversations with the funding agencies are positive, we know that I'm sure there are many other communities looking for the same solution, because places like Antigonish have, affordable housing have certainly demonstrated that, they can be effective in putting an actual roof over people's heads. That's the drawback with the coalition. We are an advocacy, education, research type entity. We're not a formalized structure and cannot apply for funding.
Yeah, and to follow up with that, I met with the mayor of the town of Port Hawkesbury and someone from the chamber, Kevin McEachern, who's involved in submitting the application. And I see the value of trying to do, good work and making sure that consultants can speak to who is the best, what profile are we looking for in our governance structure. But in the words of a construction company that used to be around here, sometimes first you get fast, then you get good. Like, I think there has to be a sense of urgency, and I'm hoping that this data speaks to the importance of, like, go. That we don't have the luxury of taking, and making sure our governance structure is solid, yes, but maybe, the consultant stuff is something we're going to have to push for. And I think this data helps drive that. Okay. All right. Thank you, folks. So moving on to hopefully a less depressing topic, the CAO's items. So we'll start with the Administration Operations Report. For those folks following along at home, it's page 26 of 109. So CAO, I'll turn it over to you if you want to pursue some of that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's all there. The new items are in yellow for everybody based on whether it's admin, whether it's energy sector development, IT, emergency management, Department of Community Development and Recreation, and then, of course, Finance and Public Works. So, yeah, as you can see, lots of yellow on this report, so there's a lot of activity on the go. And can answer some questions if needed.
Any comments, concerns, queries about the CAO's Administration Operations Report? Okay, moving on, the next item is the designation of Destination Cape Breton to administer the Cape Breton Island Marketing Levy. So I'll let you give some background on this in addition to the question we're being posed.
Thank you, Warden. The background is there that we passed the motion back in the fall of 2023 to be part of the marketing levy, which is the 3% across Cape Breton. Since then, the province has been working on the data sharing agreement. So now that a lot of these things are in place, it's Now for the municipality to receive that information, we had to enter into a data sharing agreement with the province. And again, it's with the province and the platforms as well. So it's going to give us a comprehensive list of who's acting as an accommodation anywhere in Richmond County. And then the mechanism for the remittance of the levy itself and how that's going to work. So this, of course, has not been a smooth process at all, but it's coming, and the province knows this. And DCB, Destination Cape Breton, have offered to take on this work of policing, monitoring, because it's to their benefit and to receive the funds from this levy.
So the report that, for folks paying attention, is page 31 and 32. And so in that, there is, on the bottom of page 31, there's a request to council to designate Destination Cape Breton as the administrator of the marketing levy. So you're asking us to either agree and allow them to be the administrator, or to leave things as is, at which point that work would fall to staff here at the municipal level, or some other options. So I guess on this, I will ask if there is anything anyone would like to ask, start conversation about.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. Yeah, I'd be willing to make the motion to agree to allow them, Destination Cape Breton, to administer that for the county.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mumbercat. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Marchand? Okay. Hearing no discussion, there's a motion on the floor to agree to allow Destination Cape Breton to be the administrator of the marketing levy for Richmond County. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No, so you voted yes? Okay, I saw your hand up when I said no. Good. Councillor Marchand?
Yes. At this time, I guess I'd like to make a motion in reference to DCB that we ask the CEO. I'd like to request maybe 3 or 4 years back of financials. I know there's an email from the CEO that they're going to give us some for this current year. I'd like to get our CEO to request financials going back at least 3 or 4 years.
And is that motion in respect to this issue around the marketing levy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess there's been questions about getting the financials from them over the years. There's been emails going back and forth. So the CEO asked that he has a motion to pursue this further. That's the reason for my motion this evening.
And it relates to the marketing levy, so it falls under this. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'd second that, based partially on the fact that I think it's been quite a while they've been asked for this. I know that went back a while, and even the previous councillor for District 3 had spoken about at the time. I think she was aware of how the similar group that operates around HRM, their financials are all made public, so I don't see why they can't be here.
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of directing staff to request financials going back 4 years? Is that what I heard? That's what I heard. Okay, so that's the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the deer population update. I'd like to relinquish my role as chair and ask the deputy to step in so I can speak as District 2 councillor. Where do I sit?
School presentation.
Okay.
Your button's on. You're good.
Yeah, we're good, okay. This is the briefing note. I'll just read this out here. Is that, okay. The purpose of this briefing note is to update council on our meeting with Elizabeth Walsh and Jason Power from the Department of Natural Resources. Now, this was from January.
It was. Scroll down to the yellow.
What had happened at that time, they were seeking a resolution of council authorizing staff to explore the costs of conducting a survey and contact the NSCC to inquire how the Natural Resources Environmental Technology Program may assist the county in this work. This was to do with the deer population throughout Isle Madame specifically, and the update from staff is after many attempts, this route did not proceed. So I'm not sure. We've got an update from staff here for November 2024. Staff contacted an environmental consultant on October 2nd, 2024 to discuss the process and next steps to being able to address the deer issue in Richmond County. It was learned that the first step in determining the number of transects or routes in the area of study and then doing the field work in April. An estimated value for this work is between $12,000 to $15,000 for the transect determination and field work. Additional days in the field due to weather conditions is $1,000 a day plus mileage. Staff are therefore recommending a safe budget of $20,000 to have this first stage of the work completed. Now, due to the value and policy, staff would be seeking a motion of council to do a request for quotes for the above noted work to see if there are other consultants available to conduct the study in our area. And it should also be noted that if this work begins in this fiscal, it's an unbudgeted item, as the original work was being sought as an opportunity for students to conduct the study or work. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
Line's on. Do you want to talk first? Oh, sorry, go ahead. You can talk first. No, go ahead. I just want to say that I realize that DNR and NSCC was contacted. Oh,
I shouldn't cut you off there. I'm just thinking we should probably have a motion and a seconder before we really get into any discussion on it, whether or not anyone wants to proceed with this. No, I just feel it'd be more comfortable. If there's not an appetite to proceed with that kind of budget amount, then we don't have to go through the discussion. Now you understand.
Camera's a little slow.
Now you understand what Rochelle was going through, eh?
There you go.
I would like to move that council request that staff select quotes for the above noted work so we can get a sense of cost and time frame. And I am hoping to get a seconder, at which point we could discuss how we all feel about that.
It's been moved. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Open for discussion. Councillor Marshall?
okay. I realize that the attempts have been made to DNR and NSCC, but I mean, I would recommend that we try our best. Contact NSCC again. I don't know who was contacted, and DNR. I just will not support spending $20,000. I don't know the whole history of this, but this has to do with deer on the islands. And, I mean, maybe DNR can just put out if it's a doe issue, put out more tags. I don't know. Spending $20,000 on this, I'd give it to the hospitals or wherever else, but I will not support spending any money on this.
Mr. Chair, through you, DNR will not look at this without the Transact data. It is the very first step. Every county in the province had to go through this process to start their process. They have to know what they're dealing with before they will go any further, and the Transact data gives them that.
I still won't support it. Is NSCC capable of doing that then? DNR won't do it, obviously.
NSCC has a program where students do the TRANSAC work as part of their curriculum. It just did not happen, and this problem's not going away, so.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I just, yeah, in anticipation of some concerns about the cost, I just sort of tried to organize my thoughts a little bit, and this is primarily an Isle Madame issue, and I will say primarily, I think it's safe to say, a District 2 issue, and in District 2, it is certainly more pronounced in the north side and around Rocky Bay. What I would argue, though, is that what we don't have is a deer population problem. What we have is a doe population problem, and that problem is expanding from what had been the north side going into Rocky Bay. I certainly almost hit a deer in St. Peter's yesterday, so that deer population is not staying on Isle Madame. And it has increased really dramatically, and dramatic increases are not such a big problem when numbers are small, so doubling a small number is not that big a deal. As the numbers become large, doubling large numbers becomes astronomical. So we know that there are fewer people hunting. We also know that there are fewer people trapping, and I want to speak to that separately just in a second, but we have smaller families, so people don't need as many deer. So we have what has become a fairly significant issue. And also because there are so many does on Isle Madame, there are people who don't want to hunt because the consequences for shooting a doe when you don't have a doe tag are significant. So we have hunters who really don't even want to hunt bucks because they're afraid that they'll get a doe and all of that. But there are serious implications, and I appreciate that $20,000 is a lot of money, but I do want to point to some other things we spend money on. So we routinely provide money around food security, and we discuss that as a serious issue. There is nobody in my family that didn't have a garden when we were growing up, not a single person. You cannot have a garden on Isle Madame, and particularly in the north side, unless you are prepared to build and maintain a 6-foot fence. There's just no way. So that is a food security issue. We have community garden applications. People are not submitting because they would have to include in that fence. So the discourse has been on the fence about whether to include a, pardon the pun, because they would have, the only place they feel they can do it is in the tennis courts, and they would have to give up a recreational facility. We routinely speak about, we want to have vibrant communities for our seniors. We want to make sure that our folks don't feel isolated. I'm telling you, I work at the bingos in Discourse, and there are people who don't go to bingo because they don't want to drive through the deer on the north side. We have dangerous driving conditions, and so we're in fact, a lot of our seniors on the north side are being held hostage, particularly through the fall. We want to be a group that spends, we have spent money on tourism initiatives. 2 people hit deer on the way to the Celtic Colours concert in Discourse last year, and 1 hit a deer on the way home. So we are not talking about insignificant impact in our community. Proximity to homes, we have deer that are coming closer and closer to our dwellings. And so my Facebook picture is a deer looking in my patio. I spoke to people who have had deer on their patios. There are people who have to shovel the deer manure on their way from their house to their car. And so so as deer become more plentiful, they need more area to feed. I also believe I'm all for our on-site septic systems, but certainly every morning if I wake up on a snowy day, the nose prints in my septic field are pretty significant. So we have deer that are coming closer and closer to our yards. And so the reason why I think that's significant is because where you have an increase in fawn population, you absolutely are going to have an increase in coyote population. So we have had just this week, a resident from Cape Laround spoke to me and said we saw these 5 beautiful deer, and we got our binoculars out, so they were a little distance away, but they were not deer, they were 5 coyotes. And so as somebody who has been chased by a coyote and forced to lock myself and my son in a bathroom in the park in Martinique and have a coyote scratching to get into the bathroom where I was locked, I can tell you that being chased by 1 coyote is being chased by too many coyotes. And so the coyote population doesn't bring down the deer population. It deals with, because they don't take adult deer, but we don't have the trappers that we used to. And so everything is linked. We used to have a trapping program where you could drop a coyote off at DNR and there was cash provided to you. We also don't have trappers trapping because the price of pelts has gone down. down really dramatically. So we're seeing an increase in coyote population and coyotes that are coming closer to homes, which in turn drives down the rabbit population, also a food security issue. The ticks, another issue. We know that that's a health concern. Vehicle accidents, which all goes to your premiums, which is an affordability issue. All of those things we as a council spend money on. So I don't want us to think that it's $20,000 out of pocket and that there's no benefit to residents on that front. There have been some things that have been done. There was a doe tag lotto, but very few of those went to Richmond County by comparison. And you're not required to hunt on Almadam. And in addition, the bonus tag issue has become a bit of a kind of, not a lot has happened on that front, largely because when you catch your first deer, your freezer is full. And so we don't. So I really do think we need to be mindful of the long-term ramifications of some of these issues. And so some things we also could do that are cost neutral. So for example, we have people feeding deer. Anything we could do to push out recommendations from DNR on our socials about things we should and shouldn't do around the deer population. But I will point to the fact that there is a deer cull in Truro that has been going on for several years. I think this is year 4. And Colchester County just voted overwhelmingly to put in a deer cull as well. Now that meat from a deer cull all goes to Feed Nova Scotia, so food banks. So it's not an insignificant problem, and the deer are not going anywhere, and they're headed your way. So I just feel like we need to understand the scope of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Ward. No one is saying there's not a problem. I mean, when I drive on the island, I see it as well. I just think spending this amount of money for that, there's other ways. If Colchester has passed a motion enabling a deer cull, are we able to do that? Are there other ways that we can bring this population down, this doe population? I agree it's there. All the concerns you have are valid and truthful, but spending $20,000 on a study that is it going to do anything for us? What's it going to do? Is DNR going to put in more doe tags on the island? Why can't they do that now? I mean, all of these concerns maybe should be given to DNR, and maybe they can do something to help us here. Or if we can just pass a motion to enable the deer cull, let's do that. Thank you, Deputy Warden.
So I think to my understanding, just from staff, it's that, yeah, none of those things could move forward. The province wouldn't move forward on it without that initial data. And it puts us in a hard spot.
So you're telling me, okay, Colchester County passed a motion, I'm hearing from the warden. Did they do that with having this transect? Did they need that?
I'm sure they must have.
Okay, well, okay, let's maybe find out. What rights do we have to initiate a deer cull or anything that can alleviate this problem? I mean, maybe we need to look at that, and I think we do have someone here that works at NSCC. Maybe we can, sort.
Don't count deer, Councillor.
No, but I mean, maybe you can speak to them and see if they can help us with any of this. If their study would be okay. If DNR won't do it, maybe we need, them to do it. It would be a great project for students, and it may help us resolve this. Yeah, well, we have a contact here, so.
Yeah, and that was the thought originally. And I mean, at this point, we have a motion and it's been seconded, but it's basically to investigate these costs further and maybe, find out, because it may not end up, that we have to look at likely 20,000. Maybe it ends up less. I mean, we may have to budget a little more based on this report. These numbers aren't going to be necessarily firm, depending on whether it's so. But I don't think this initial motion tonight is just to basically move forward to get more information on possibly going ahead with this based on getting quotes. Yeah. So, if you're still not comfortable with that, that's fine. Just so we're all clear, that's all. That we're not approving going forward at this moment. Councillor Mummerkett.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. So, yeah, Councillor Marchand, I know that staff made multiple attempts to engage with the NRET program. these types of projects always boil down to timing for programs like that, when they're out on work terms, when they're doing co-ops, et cetera. There's not much that I would be able to do to influence any of that. Those are in, college kind of program level decisions and instructor level kind of engagement that would have to happen there. So, that's not my role within the college, so I would have some difficulty, I guess, influencing any outcome there, just to be clear. I'm still very totally supportive of, if it can be arranged, then that's great. And I think, I don't think it hurts to ask again. You know what I mean? And no harm in that. But just to the Deputy Warden's point is, I think, if I heard correctly, the motion was to authorize staff to go for quotes, so that we would have more accurate cost information. I just want to make sure that I heard that correctly. Yeah.
I read from the final line of the update. So staff would be seeking a motion to request quotes for the above work to see if there are other consultants to conduct the study in our area. And I will expand upon that, which I don't think changes the motion, but, I think it would be, we'd be remiss if we didn't also double check with DNR that there wasn't any other way, that, there's been conversation about, over like aerial views and aerial counts of 4,000 deer on Alma Dam. So if, is that not a count? I'd also like to know if the CAO has, there's also been conversation about DNR. DNR makes decisions, right? Do we have, is it an urban legend that somebody went to Little Ants and counted the deer? So there has been conversation about when they counted in order to determine that they went to Little Ants, because I might make a motion to get that guy to come here and sit here and say, I drove through Alma Dam and stood up in Little Ants and said, here's a good place to count deer. I'd like to meet that guy. So, at this point, I think we can certainly expand those conversations, speak to MLA, speak to whoever. But yeah, I think it's important for us to look at all the ways we can get this information. Ultimately, we may have to pay some money to get this information. But that's not the motion on the floor.
If I may, Mr. Chair, through you, I have no problem reaching out to the campus again to see if, while we're getting the quotes, if there's any opportunity for this work to happen and what the time frame of that would be that works for them, so that when we do have the quotes, that'll be part of the conversation that'll be available to you guys. It's the best I can do.
Warden, did you say you read from the last paragraph, seeking a motion to request quotes for the above noted work? There are other consultants, or? Because what you just read, I didn't see it all here.
Update 2024.
Yeah, I have that on the back. Yeah.
Seeking a motion of council to do a request for quotes for the above noted work to see if there are any other consultants available to conduct this study in the area. That's, yeah.
I just shut myself off. Mr. Chair, if I may just add clarity to that, because DNR couldn't proceed without the information, they referred me to a consultant that does this work. So I've only talked to one so far. So I need to go out and talk to others, and due to the value of this and what was quoted by this individual, I can't just sole source this. We have to go out and get multiple quotes. And that was this person's estimate, just off the cuff. So I'd like to get a firmer scope, some idea of the transacts they're talking about, and come back to you guys with the information and options. So.
Okay, so the quotes aren't going to cost us anything, getting the quotes. And while staff is doing that, you're still going to try your best to contact NSCC. Okay. Thank you. I'll support if it's just the quotes.
So we have a motion and a seconder. After discussion, I guess I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Good job. You get to take that. Welcome back.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of fire equipment reallocation, and it in your budget package, if you're following along, it's actually got out of sequence. It's page 38. So I'll turn it over to the CAO for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last year's budget under fire services, $10,000 was allocated. It was going to be $5,000 towards SCBA filling station that would be used by multiple departments, and then also washers, extractors to get the contaminants out of the bunker gear. They have now asked, they're reallocating funds at the fire department. They wanted to use all the $10,000 towards the SCBA filling station, and they're each going to get their own extractors at 3 different departments, maybe 4. But it doesn't change our allocation at all. It's still the $10,000 that was approved in April. It's just, it's been a change in how it's being spent, so we wanted to make council aware.
Do you need a motion for that?
Motion
You
to
want?
receive, if you're fine with it, would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I'll move those CEO's comments on reallocating the funds.
Moved by Councillor Marchand and seconded by Councillor Sampson. Any discussion on the motion? Sure.
Thank you. So I guess the question is, this is a memo from from Steve to you. So does this kind of go through the Fire Services Committee too, or how does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair, through the council, it did get brought up at the Fire Services Committee, but as the mechanics of that committee are under a work in progress and review, it's going through this way at this point, just so that as they want to proceed with this, we're making sure that all the people and the decision makers that made that decision and allocated the funds are aware of how they're doing it. Yep.
Any other discussion, question on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Next item is the community acknowledgement. My understanding is we're early in the month because we moved our meetings ahead. So the volunteer of the month has not been either selected or notified, or the graphics done up. So we'll recognize that individual in January. Are there any other recognitions of note councillors would like to mention?
Yeah, Madam Warden, thank you. Just want to acknowledge all the staff at the credit union here in Petit Gras and the staff at La Picasse. Yesterday they had a Noel Almadam, a different version of it. It seems like ever since COVID, it was at the Forge, then it was a drive-through where kids were getting treats and not having to get out of their cars, and that worked well for a couple of years. And then last year was at the Forge, and this year the credit union took over, and the staff at the Picasso took over, and I guess it was a great event yesterday. So just want to acknowledge those people and all the volunteers involved. So the credit union, La Picasso, and all the volunteers involved in making it a great day for the kids. I guess it was a well-attended event, so just want to acknowledge them.
Thank you. I think to follow up on that, really, I think we should acknowledge all the organizations that are either currently or about to put on Christmas holiday events for residents in Richmond County. It's a chocked full calendar, certainly, and volunteers are really the backbone of much of what happens, but never more so than in the months of November and December. Certainly kudos to the folks who put on the Festival of Trees in St. Peter's, and really nice to see those kinds of generosity built into that. The municipality was a part of that, and included hats, mittens, and scarves, and then there was donations to the food bank. So, just a shout out to all the organizations that are doing really great work at Christmas. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. Just echoing your comments, also want to do a shout out for the Village of St. Peter's. They're hosting their Christmas tree lighting at 6 p.m. on December 6th, and that is always a great food bank kind of supporter as well. I know there are Stuff the Cruiser events coming up as well, and those are always tons of fun. But I did want to say a special acknowledgement out, kind of departing from the Christmas theme, to a couple of organizations. The first is the new Salty Waters Wellness Market in St. Peter's, which is at the location of the former B&E General Store. They've just launched a new brand as well, St. Peter's Clothing Co., and I saw some of the sweatshirts last night, and it's looking really great. They've had some really great professional design done. Looking forward to the collaboration between Paula McDonald and Stephanie Stone to see what wonderful things come of that. And also, Councillor in your region, Richmond Warriors Boxing Club is doing a grand opening on December 7th from 12 to 4, and I'm going boxing. So over to you. Challenge laid down.
Yeah, the new location at the old community centre in Bearhead, they'll be hosting this Saturday from 12 to 4 a fundraiser and open house. You know, I received a text today to say that, you know, there may be discounts or free boxing lessons for councillors. So I said, you best be careful. I may take you up on that. I don't know. So anyway, looking forward to stopping in Saturday for a while and checking that out. I'd encourage anybody able to do so. That'll be from 12 to 4 at the former Bearhead Community Centre, which is just past the church in Bearhead on the opposite side of the road, just before you hit Potlatech on the left side.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to correspondence. We have two that require action. One is in your package starting on page 39. Council is looking for a motion or staff are looking for a motion from council that the committee of the whole recommend writing off taxes for the property that's listed there, owned by Rodney Sampson, which was completely destroyed by fire, in the amount of $400.69, which represents taxes on the dwelling only from August 7th to 2024 to March 31st, 2025. So the information there, as well as the letter from the owner, as well as the policy, is listed there, and the information from, there's quite a lot of information here for the $400.69. So there's a motion, or sorry, there's a request for a motion. Does anybody want to?
Thanks, Warden. So I will make a motion to authorize staff to write off taxes in the amount of $400.69, which represents taxes on the dwelling only from August 7th, 2024 to March 31st, 2025 for property damaged by fire, account number 04127455.
Seconded by Councillor Sampson, moved by Councillor Mumberket. Excuse me, so you've heard the motion. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favour of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Next item requiring action is a request from Nicole Latimer, who is the solid waste educator for the Municipality of the County of Inverness, looking for representation from our municipality to join the Rural Region Solid Waste Committee. So there is... So that begins on page 45. And so you'll see that our Director of Operations has indicated that he has agreed to represent staff from our municipality. So we're looking to see if there is an interest and appetite to have somebody represent. It's not something that would be through charter. It's something that if we felt it was not helpful, we could withdraw our attendance. But looking for suggestion from council.
That's a good question. Through you to the director, Chris, did they mention if it would be virtual or in person, the meetings? I can't remember. Did it say in here somewhere?
Yeah, it says most meetings will be held virtually with an annual in-person.
I was just trying to see if that would sweeten the deal for some of the councillors around the table. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just saying they'd meet once a year in person so that people would at least recognize the faces. I believe Port Hawkesbury. Although I shouldn't say that because they don't specifically say, I guess I'm assuming. But that everything else would be virtual. No, well, looking at Director, do you know the answer to that? Day or meeting? Yeah.
I think all that's yet to be determined.
Yeah. So likely yet to be determined. Are there any reservations from councillors about us agreeing to take a look at this? I know we are mindful of the fact that this used to be a council of 10 and it is now a council of 5, and we need to be mindful of that, but this is not something, we could certainly hear this out and withdraw our attendance if we felt it.
Yeah, I'm willing to make a motion. Our director, I'm getting the impression the Director of Public Works is willing to attend. I'll make a motion that he be on this committee, and I guess if there's any councillor that wants to be, put their name at any time. Because you're looking for an action on this, so.
So that might actually solve our problem, though. If we made a motion to allow or have our Director of Public Works and a councillor who is interested attend, that would be enough for the travel policy, and then we could maybe look at membership afterwards. But I think we'd have to have a councillor who was willing to go. Councillor Murmucap.
Thank you, Warden. So I agree. I fully support the formation of this type of group, and I think it would be important for Richmond County to be there. Solid waste is a big chunk of our activity. It's a big chunk of our budget, so significant in nature. I guess I would maybe second Councillor Marchand's motion to authorize the Director of Public Works to attend the meetings, and to and to pursue a council representative. I guess, Councillor Marchand, if I'm not misinterpreting the intent of your motion, but I would, I'd be comfortable seconding that, and I'd also consider attending if the timing worked out to your point of is it evenings, how that might work. I love a good 7:30 a.m. meeting, so that's my favorite thing ever.
So there is a motion on the floor to support the director's membership on this committee and that of a councillor pending the selection of the actual councillor. Yes? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Seconder, do we have any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next item is for information only. There is in your package, starting on page 51, the Nova Scotia Community College report. Very interesting information in that report if you have had a chance to take a look. The second item is from Huguette Labelle, Chair of the Independent Advisory Board for Senate Appointments, regarding the Senate appointment cycle. That's on page 62 of your package. There is, so I'll open the floor if anybody has any comments, concerns, questions. There's no motion or action on our part. Although I will say I have been involved with nominations to Senate, and it's very involved and is not something that, it's a worthy thing, but it's a lot of work. So I don't know if maybe it's something we could push out on our socials around, just, hey folks, this is, if there's somebody.
This is how you do it.
Yeah. Do you need a motion for that? No. Yeah.
we can
anyway,
take that direction.
yeah, there's a good amount of information there, and the cycle for Nova Scotia is coming up, but it is something that the sooner folks knew, the better, so, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor.
I just want to highlight the fact that in NSCC's community report, there's a really, there's a focus and a highlight on faculty at the Strait Area campus, who was, I guess, I would say the major contributor to the 2024 development of 2 hydrogen micro-credentials that occurred and that were heavily supported by Everwind Fuels right here in our community in terms of providing access to the site for video capture and interviews and all that good stuff. And those micro-credentials won the Digital Innovator Award at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention. So great to see Richmond County content being featured in a national effort like that. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, all kinds of good stuff there. The next item is a review of checks. However, I mentioned this at the last council meeting, that typically our meetings are held the second Monday of the month, but we've moved it up because of Christmas. So this meeting is scheduled earlier in the month than is typical, so December checks will be reviewed at the January Committee of the Whole report. So actually, I'm sorry, that would be November and December's would be. So review of action items. There is a attachment at the very end that talks about action items that we have asked of our CAO. So I'll let Troy speak to that, and I believe we have an update on one of the items. Phone and email?
Which one?
Phone and email.
Oh, right. Yeah, so the whole list is there. What number was that one? It'd be near the end. Slide over here. The one regarding, it just came up regarding,
438.
there we go,
So on
430.
page 109, item number 438. This was Councillor Marchand's request.
It was. So looking to have phone numbers and the cost for it. So we heard back today, otherwise we would have had it in a report to you. But to get 5 lines on our system with 5 different numbers was going to be $29.15 per month per line. We also have a second option though, where we could have a common number and then it just goes to an automated attendant, and it would say, for District 1, Sean Sampson, press 1. For District 2, Lois Landry, hit 2. For District 3, and that would be one line with those auto attendant, and it's $21.95 a month as an option. So it's still just a virtual phone that gets set up, and then we can send it off and forward that onto your individual cell phones, so that it goes directly to you guys, if you would like. So those are 2 options.
So I know that we had asked for some kind of, information before we made a decision. I don't know if perhaps staff would like to get that sent to them in an email and maybe ask any clarifying questions around what does that mean, what would that look like? And there also is a bit of an update around the email and just what that would mean in terms of, which, to be honest, at my house, the VCR still says 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So I would like it if I could actually see that in writing so that I could actually see what that means around where emails that might be to District 3 live and go after people come and go. So I'm wondering if there's an appetite to maybe see that provided to us in emails, and so we can ask follow-up questions and maybe pursue it another time. Does that suit people?
Okay. I can have it ready for January.
Great. Okay, so we move forward on that, but I think it's a lot to digest.
Okay.
So we are now at the items added agenda to the agenda, and we did not add any, right? Right. So question period is our last item. It is a 15-minute question period. Reminder, this question period is not restricted to any items on the agenda. So we'll take questions from the gallery or by phone. For folks watching at home, you can call 902-226-9885. Again, there is a slight delay, so we sort of sit here for a few minutes because it takes a while for that to come through. Any questions from the gallery? No? Oh. Still.
There's an Atari attached to it.
That's right. Right next to my 8-track.
Yeah. Ooh, the floor model.
So we'll just wait another minute or two. It catches us. It's always a surprise to me how long it takes sometimes for calls to come through.
You'll notice at the tree thing in St. Peter's this year, we partnered with St. Peter's, the village.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. There was a lot of stuff collected. Yeah. Time for any calls to come through. Seeing no other items on the agenda, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Good job.